Your Honor, if I could please have Exhibit 145 that is in evidence published.
Yes.
Mr. Wolk. Ms. Hartnett, you will recall discussion about the taillight from the Lexus that was discussed on both direct and cross-examination yesterday?
Yes.
And you recall the discussion with regard to the weather that was in existence on or about January 29th. I'm not going to go into it at all. I just want to sort of refresh and reorient to where we were on that topic. You recall that?
Yes.
And I am now going to reference specifically what you referred to yesterday, I believe, as the inner part of the taillight, sometimes the inside of the taillight. Do I have that parlance correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So my question is, did you find any sand or salt or any other debris in the inside portion of that taillight?
No, I did not.
Now, and you can take that down. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. You recall discussion about shards of taillight? Do you recall that discussion at all in your testimony?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay. I wasn't certain whether we had that parlance. So my question is, to your knowledge, was there any testing of any taillight alleged to have been found at 34 Fairview for biological material?
No, there was not.
And could you just please state what your definition is, inclusion, when you refer to biological material?
Those items were not processed in the criminalistics unit for any type of biological, meaning they would not tested for blood, semen, saliva, or a skin cell collection.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part that you...
Or a skin cell collection.
Now turning and changing topics, there was a T-shirt and a hoodie of the decedent. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And are you okay with my parlance of T-shirt, the yellow or orange T-shirt on the one hand, and then the gray hoodie sweatshirt? Is that an acceptable parlance for you?
Yes.
So with regard to those two items, if I could, Your Honor, have published what is already in evidence, Exhibit 151 and 150, and Mr. Wolk, if we could please put those side by side. Alrighty, so is it correct that what's on the left is the right sleeve of what we refer to as the hoodie, and on the right is the, what color would you like to call that T-shirt?
Orange, please.
All right, so the orange T-shirt. Is that what we're looking at up on the screen?
Yes, so it's the right sleeve of the gray hoodie and the back of the orange T-shirt.
Thank you. Am I correct that you included a handwritten note on your report that you found, quote, debris from each of these two items, or from these two items collectively?
I don't handwrite notes on my report, so I'm just confused about where you're asking that.
Okay, I'll ask a different question. Hopefully it will be clear. Did you find debris on either of those two items of clothing?
Yes, I performed a debris collection on each of those items and combined them.
I'm sorry, it's not your fault, it's mine. There's a HVAC noise I can't hear. If you
So
could
can we
speak up
turn the
just a
air
little.
conditioning off, please?
I'm okay with
I can
it.
speak
It's
up.
just
I'm
if you could
sorry.
speak up a little. I don't want to
Of course.
discomfort people. Can you move the mic?
Yes, I can speak up. My apologies.
If you could speak a little louder, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes.
Can you repeat your answer, please?
Can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Sure. Did you find debris on these articles of clothing?
Yes, I took scrapings from each of these items of clothing and combined the debris. Yes.
With regard to scrapings, can you describe how the term scrapings relates to these two items of these two items that are on the screen?
Yes. Scraping is the mechanism I used to remove any debris that was remaining on both the sweatshirt and the T-shirt. I held each up over my lab bench. I took a long metal spatula and scraped any debris that was on these items into a small glassine packet.
Is it correct that you do not know where the debris came from specifically, other than it came from one or both items of both of these two items?
Yes, that's correct.
So the debris could be from just the hoodie, it could be just from the T-shirt, or it could be a combination of the both?
Yes, the items were packaged together, so they were already commingled. So there was no way for me to determine which debris came from which item, and it would be misleading to label them as such, so I combined them.
Exactly where my next point was going to go to, thank you, and my next questions. So what, if anything, were these two items contained in when you got them?
They were contained in a brown paper bag, and they may have been contained in a larger box, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
So when you got them and you saw them for the first time, using your term, they were commingled together, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And was there any debris in the bottom of the bag?
There may have been. When I examine something on my bench, I also shake out the bag to ensure that nothing is left behind and that everything is examined and accounted for.
Now, am I also correct that there is no description of the actual debris that you found? For example, you didn't specify whether it was little fibers, little hair, little pieces of this or that. Do I have that correct?
Correct. I did not do any examination on it. I just packaged it.
And therefore, you didn't note whether any of the debris was a plastic or a plasticine nature, correct?
Correct. That would not be part of my analysis.
And there was no marker put on any part of the debris that was recovered. Is that also correct?
I labeled the debris with an item number. I'm not sure what you mean by marker, if that's what you mean.
Parts of debris, in other words, there wasn't separate identification or markers for separate pieces of debris.
No, I did not separate out the debris.
There was no photographs taken of the debris?
Not by me, no.
Do you have knowledge of whether there was a photograph taken of the debris by anybody?
I do not.
So you have, as you sit here today, you have no knowledge that there's a photograph of the debris?
That's correct. I do not.
When you received the hoodie and the T-shirt that's depicted as 150 and 151, they came in together, commingled, with some debris at the bottom in an evidence bag. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if there was debris at the bottom of the bag. What I can say is that there was debris on the items, and I did shake out the bag. I don't have a memory of anything coming out of the bag. I don't know.
So there could have been debris at the bottom of the bag when you shook it out. You just don't recall.
Yes, correct.
If we could, Your Honor, please have Exhibit 154 already in evidence published. And let's keep it there for a moment, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Wolk for you to zoom in. Ms. Hartnett, do you recognize this generally, and then I'm going to have it zoom in so you can read it, as an evidence bag?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Wolk, could you please zoom in, starting from the top, so that Ms. Hartnett can fairly read this And if you could, Ms. Hartnett, just take a moment to read it, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, but I want you to have a fair opportunity to read it. Let me know when you're done.
Okay.
And if we can then scroll down, Mr. Wolk, so that Ms. Hartnett can fairly read the rest of what's on there.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Wolk, if you could just leave it where it is now. With Your Honor's permission, I don't see a need to keep the lights off. Can have that on,
Okay,
but if
that's
Ms.
great.
Hartnett
Lights
needs
on,
it,
please.
you'll just let us know. So, is this the evidence bag that the T-shirt and the hoodie were in when you received those items?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
You see the name of collected by someone there. Can you read who that states it was collected by?
Yes.
And state what that is.
It says TPR Proctor.
And are you able to conclude what the TPR stands for?
Generally, we use that to abbreviate trooper.
Right. So that is former Trooper Proctor that it says collected by, correct?
That is what's written on the bag, yes.
And the date of the collection, if we can just, Mr. Wolf, just focus in on that. Thank you. The date of the collection is January 29th, 2022, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it a fair conclusion from this evidence bag and your experience on the matter to conclude that former Trooper Proctor was the person who collected the evidence and put it in the bag?
I have no knowledge of who actually collected it and put it in the bag. I can only read what I see on the monitor.
In terms of, and if we could, Mr. Wolk, please take that down and put back up the side-to-side images and depictions of the T-shirt and the hoodie. Do you know the journey, if you will, of those two items before you received them?
No, I do not.
The debris that you ultimately saw on the hoodie and the T-shirt, and that which may or may not have also been additionally in the bag, do you know where that debris would have been picked up from?
No, I don't know the source of the debris.
And you were not provided with information as to the potential source of that debris, correct?
No.
Were you aware of whether or not the debris, whether those items had been on the floor of an ambulance or a floor of a hospital?
No, I did not have any information like that.
Is it important to maintain the sanitary condition of evidence generally to avoid contamination?
We do our best to avoid contamination once we receive items into evidence, yes.
And what are some of the protocols that are used to avoid contamination of evidence, generally?
Generally, wearing gloves, putting items in packaging, bleaching any materials or utensils that we're going to use, or using disposable materials, sterile materials when possible or necessary. We also wear lab coats when processing evidence.
Is another protocol or technique to separate out pieces of evidence to prevent cross-contamination?
Sometimes we will separate pieces of evidence. If the items are already mixed in with each other, then the items are kept together, can be kept together.
Do you know the chain of custody of either the hoodie or the T-shirt?
I only have record of the chain of custody from when it was delivered to the lab.
So before any delivery to the lab, you do not have knowledge of the chain of custody of either of those two items?
No, I just know which detective unit dropped the items off.
And which detective unit was that?
Norfolk Detective Unit.
What I would like to now do is to, we could now take that down. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I want to sort of speciate, if you will, separate out the evidence that you have talked about so far so that it's clear what you submitted and what may have been submitted by others to the lab. Do you understand that concept generally?
Yes.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is to give categories, and if you would be kind enough to say, I submitted it by some other person, that would be helpful. Any items that were collected from the vehicle, who submitted those to the lab or brought them to the lab?
I did.
The swabs from the red Solo cups.
I submitted the swabs.
The drinking glass that you were presented with at Canton PD.
I submitted that item.
The two clothing items that we just saw on the screen, the hoodie and the T-shirt.
Those were submitted by the Norfolk Detective Unit.
Were there also any fingernails that were part of the investigation and that you had knowledge of?
Yes.
Describe what those were, please.
Fingernails may be collected at the medical examiner's office, and they're clippings from the top of the fingernails of the victim.
And were those submitted to the lab?
Yes.
And by whom?
By the Norfolk Detective Unit.
And the phrase known blood standards, are you familiar with that phrase?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, please, what that means?
A known blood standard is a sample of blood that is collected from an identified person.
And which person were those known blood standards related to your knowledge in this matter?
We received a tube of blood that was identified as belonging to John O'Keefe.
And with regard to the fingernails and the known blood standards, who submitted those to the lab?
The Norfolk County Detective Unit.
So am I correct to conclude that for those items that you submitted to the lab, you knew about, you knew sort of their journey, if you will, but that those items that were submitted by, I think you referred to as Norfolk County, was that your parlance?
Yes, correct.
You don't have knowledge about those other than that they were submitted by them?
Prior to them arriving at the lab, correct. I have no knowledge of what occurred, where they were stored or anything like that before that.
And no knowledge of those items not submitted by you would include no knowledge of the chain of custody of those items, correct?
No knowledge prior to them being received into the lab. That is correct.
Your Honor, if I may have a moment, please.
Okay.
It'll probably be 30 to 45 seconds. Thank you. Bear with me, please. So the questions I have for Ms. Hartnett at this time. Thank you for answering my questions, Ms. Hartnett.
Thank you.